Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Mason. I'm chairperson of the Citizens Oversight Committee of the bond for the new jail. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Cassie, can we do a roll call, please?
Steve Cooper,
Here.
Heather Gardner, here. Javier Mira,
Present.
Zena Thompson,
Present.
Joanne Davis, here. Mike Hyde, Casey
Here. Thank you. So I have a quorum. Notice of this meeting was properly posted on July 22nd of this year. For purposes of this agenda, action means any of the following: amending, approving as amended, deferring, denying, giving instructions to staff, making a recommendation to another public body, receiving documents or presentations, referring to committee, reconsidering, reopening, returning, or striking the item. We have some minutes from our June 25th meeting. Is there any discussion or a motion?
I'll move the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? We have a roll call vote, please. Or we vote on the screen.
Heather Gardner,
Yes.
Javier
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Steve Mason.
Yes. Stacy, you want to go to item 2 next, recurring items, or just go to departmental items?
Well, I got a few things on item 2.
Okay, perfect.
It's just a few things that I've noticed in the news and a few things that's been on my mind. Everywhere I go here lately, I keep hearing from people that the county has a problem. The county has a huge problem. We don't know if we want to help the county. And I don't see it that way. I've been researching statutes all week, and the penalty for not having a jail for the county is basically nothing. I think you have a community problem here. If we can't provide a jail, the people that's going to suffer is not the county. People that's going to suffer are the citizens, and you are the citizens, and that's who you represent. So just going to get your thoughts on that narrative. And I think the narrative maybe needs to change. Just what's out there in the community.
That's a very valid point, Stacy, and I think we should endeavor to get more people to see that this is a community problem, not just a county problem. I was just noticing that there was some crime committed in Edmond, and the two gentlemen were brought to the Oklahoma County Jail. Seems like it's a problem for Edmond as well, not just the county. So I agree with your comments, and we'll be glad to help in any way that you think we can be helpful.
Well, I think you were, or I thought you would be up there to be doing things like picking materials and commenting on colors and things of that nature. But this turned into a political football, so I think your role got quite a bit bigger, the way I see it, as far as leading this community effort. Some other things going on. The jail trust informed us that there was a problem with one of the north towers, some settlement. The doors won't even swing open or closed. So some amount of settlement. I don't know how serious it is or isn't, but we're sending a structural engineer down probably later this week or maybe next week. We're getting the contract in place for him to do an evaluation of that facility. It's just another problem in a long line of problems that we have with our current facility. It just keeps growing, getting worse. The news last night, health department's threatening $10,000 a day fines against us if we don't allow them in for a health inspection. Don't know any more than that, what's on the news. That can't be good. And then with the status of our lawsuit against the city for the land site, the first court date's been set for October 17th. And that's just kind of a preliminary hearing, not much to it. I keep hearing from some private sector attorneys that our case is still really strong. We're probably going to win it in about 2028 because it's set up for these kind of delays. That's the city's new strategy. And then at this podium here yesterday at our infrastructure committee, the presiding judge was talking to us, and he's want to make sure that he gets 5 new courtrooms, 3 at JJC that we're kind of looking at, and 2 in the new facility. Stress the importance of getting those. He's been meeting with the Supreme Court folks, and he's been asking for new judges. The reason for that is, I guess, our caseload is getting that big. And as evidenced, last night's count was 1,508 inmates. So we're trending up. That's probably 150 more than the last time we met. So there is a trend going the other direction. I don't know why crime is up. Javier, you may have an idea on that. You're on a state task force.
I am a state task force, and I think there's going to be a lot more enforcement against marijuana offenders. And I'm not talking about users, I'm talking about groups that are trying to distribute illegally in the state. So I anticipate that our requirements for a county jail are going to continue to increase significantly over the next couple of years at least.
Well, you're not the only one seeing that trend. So I think that's all I have on item 2, Mr. Chairman, unless you have any questions.
Any questions on item 2?
I just have a question back on your first point. How do we change the community's perspective, attitude toward this county problem?
I don't know. Kind of felt isolated here lately. The only ones seem to be working towards a solution are the county folks and this board. No one else seems to be interested in this problem, and they need to be, because, again, if this project fails, those that are going to suffer are the people in the community. So they need to be thinking about that. So you being their representatives, I don't know how you get their interest or attention, but
Steve, I think probably one of the best ways is to reach out to organizations that we're involved with to share the message that this is not just a county issue, but a community issue. A lot of folks seem to think it's the county's problem, but if we cannot incarcerate the people that should be incarcerated, they're going to be running in our streets. They're going to feel emboldened to commit more crimes, as there's not a penalty that includes jail time. So I think the more we can do with social and civic groups where we participate, the better we'll be able to educate, because they trust us, obviously, if we're part of those organizations.
What's the ask? I mean, if we need support beyond the county, we need funding help?
I think that's the number one key thing is that's holding us back from being where we should be is obviously the funding and the site. We're getting tied up in litigation that shouldn't be there.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, Deshaun. The DOJ oversight, what's the status of that?
I am not 100% sure, but I think they've let us up from the MOU that we were under in 2008. That's my belief. But they're still watching. I know they met with our commissioners earlier this year. It was an executive session, so I have no idea what was discussed or said, but I know they're still, they're watching pretty close to what we're doing.
Is there a clear impact on not meeting whatever arbitrary timeline DOJ has, and in other communities that have not met the goals in accordance with DOJ oversight, what has been the result? Do you know?
Not really. I mean, they seem to be pretty lenient for a long number of years, and HOK may be able to answer this when they come up to talk to you, because they work around the country a lot. And I've talked to them about that a little bit. And there's 2 or 3 states around where the DOJ did finally take action, and I think HOK has some firsthand knowledge of that I don't have. But it'd be a good question for them here in a little bit.
Because in my mind, if we have this hovering and the community is unaware of the possible ramifications of not moving forward expeditiously, then it could literally cost us 4 or 5 times. I may be outside the true estimation of what our current cost lines seem to be.
Yeah, I think clearly we as Oklahomans are going to try to hold the line on costs. I don't think cost will be no object for them.
I think to your point, Joanne, yeah, from what I've seen, the average period is 20 to 25 years.
And we're in year what?
And what year are we in?
2008 to 24, 16.
16. So technically, we have 4 years to figure this out. I don't think the Fed is gonna give us a whole lot of time. I mean, they've already given us enough. I think what they'll do is they'll come in, give us a solution. I don't know that it's 3 or 4 times the cost, but for sure double the cost. The big challenge with that is that the county would then have to repay that in a 3-year period. So we'd have to increase, or the county would have to increase ad valorem and create some sort of a jail tax to pay all of this off in 3 years. And I think that would be detrimental to our community as we're trying to recruit big employers with quality jobs. That's going to be a big deterrent.
So when we go out to, and this is the point that I'm really trying, I know I'm going full circle here, trying to make is that if we can't explain to the citizens and everybody has the same message on what the ramifications will be and the cost associated with that, that's where I think we need to, and that's just my personal opinion, that we need to address. We've got to tell them the true story. And at the end of the day, we've got to make a decision, period. And if we don't, we're going down a hole that we're going to pay for in more ways than just the cost of building a jail by DOJ.
So respecting these comments that we need to improve our community outreach and engagement, I have 2 ideas. One, I believe in the HOK contract, there was some money set aside for what I'll call a PR firm. And also, I think each of the commissioners' offices are represented in here, and they have the ability to communicate very well with people assigned to that in their offices. What do we think of those 2 ideas if we all, I guess to Stacy, if we support, we need to improve our communication?
Yeah, I think to back up what you were saying, I think first we need to create the message. What is the message? We all need to know what the message is. And then I think we execute using those funds to get the right PR behind us to move that message forward. But what that message needs to be probably needs some brainstorming sessions or potentially a message from the county on what you want it to be, what it needs to be. And then we can help refine that to some degree. But before we can run with the message, we have to have the right message, like you said.
So Stacy, we develop a message, whoever develops it. Should we ask HOK, because I believe it's part of their contract to help? Or should we ask the 3 commissioners' offices that I believe have those type people in their offices to help?
Well, you're a recommending body. I think you make any recommendation at the line you want to make.
Can HOK speak to their contract as far as what's in there that we have not utilized, please?
Yeah, we did set aside an amount for PR support should that be needed. So that is still there. We haven't used it. I don't remember what the amount was, but I'll have to go look at that.
I remember the same thing. I'm pretty sure. The line item.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be wise to have their group define the message, working in conjunction with the county, and then work through the county offices to disseminate the message throughout the community. I think that would be the most expeditious way to do that.
Do we agree with what Javier said?
Yeah, I mean, are we crafting an articulation of the current situation and the ramifications if we don't do something, or are we also crafting a path forward? Because I feel like there's not an understanding of the implications of failing. I mean, our current path doesn't lead anywhere. We're designing a jail we can't build. So it's defining the current situation and the pressures and the ramifications of failing to build a jail, and then a path forward with the money we've got, or a path forward with if we're able to find the additional funds. And that might be a two-stage kind of process. When you speak to people, what are they misunderstanding? The current situation, or they just look at us and say we're drawing a 600 million in jail and we have 200 million, and what a problem.
Yeah, I get the sense that they don't see how it affects them, and it's not anything they need to get involved with, which couldn't be further from the truth.
So maybe we need to define the problem and articulate it before we move to a solution. I don't know.
I think that would be wise. People do not feel compelled to take action, unlike a lot of the MAPS projects that we've supported. Most of the community gets to enjoy the benefit of the end result. People are not looking to go into jail, so I could see why they would not have an interest in supporting a facility of this nature. However, they need to recognize that there are consequences for not supporting and understanding the problem that we as a community have. So I think it's two-phase. We educate the public about the need for the facility. Phase two is the funding piece. But I think initially we need to make sure that we get everybody to understand the consequences of not taking action.
I think there could be still a need for a PR firm, and I think it could be about the messaging of what is needed once we shift the narrative. I think the first effort is to shift the narrative, and I think that could go through HOK and the commissioners to create that. And then once that message is out to the community, I think that there could be an effort to have our solution to the problem. First thing, to understand the problem, then we have the solution to the problem, and that we come on with a multifaceted approach where we as citizens have our PR firm that's helping us shape that community narrative from our perspective.
Well, I appreciate these comments and your understanding of where we're at.
Well, it seems like maybe should we make a recommendation, and that HOK and the county, I don't know what to call it, prepare a brief that articulates the current situation with the jail and the ramifications of failing to act or fund or build, or however you want to. I'm not saying it well, but I think you understand where I'm going.
And then, these are great people. I think they can prepare it and start before we meet again. I think we all understand the issue.
Yeah, and armed with that, I would be more able to carry that message out into the world than I am currently today.
So Stacy, are you comfortable with this input you've received to start that process, or you need a motion?
I'm comfortable.
Okay. So I think what we're asking you to do is develop what we've been discussing and start implementing it. And we'd like to see action before our August meeting. It gives you a month.
Okay.
Does that seem? And then actually start implementing it. I don't think we need to wordsmith what they write. They're very capable. So I guess I'm asking that prior to our next meeting, create the message and start implementing the message, whether it's through the commissioner's offices or through the HOK PR firm. Is that fair?
HOK okay with that?
Perfect. Okay, does that conclude that thought? for us? Okay. Other comments for Stacy on item 2? Any comments from the public on item 2? Are you done with item 2, Stacy? So we're at item 3.
Item 3, this gets into our costs and our budget. Try to clear up a little bit of confusion. The one thing you've got's a bunch of bad choices in front of you. We don't have a good one, so keep that in mind. We're tracking 3 budgets. Now that confuses a lot of people, but I know every one of you, and you're not going to be confused. Just when you're having conversations amongst yourself or with me or anybody, let's make sure we know which budget we're talking about. The first one we're tracking is the one that we should be doing because our experts have told us how many beds we need in that new facility and what kind of facility it needs to be and so on and so forth. And that's about 2,248 beds was the exact count for the detention center. There's more in the behavioral care center. And that budget at schematic design was about 680 million. And now we're in design development, and we've had some costs go down, but some go up because we still got some inflationary pressures. So the number really hasn't changed. You've got those documents in front of you, and Flinko's going to go through them. And if you have any questions, you'll have that as a resource. And then the county commissioners did vote that they would consider going down to 1,800 beds for a total count, which gives you an effective 1,500 beds. On that point, there's classifications and so forth. Sometimes there might be 2 beds in a cell, but you, based on who's in there, you can't put a second person in. So when you got 1,800 physically there, you may only have 1,500 inmates that you can handle. They didn't want to go below that floor. And you heard the reason today. We're sitting at 1,508 inmates right now, and we're 3 years from opening. So the floor may be a little low, but that's where we're at today because that's the vote they took. So we're also tracking that budget. We'll call it the floor budget. About 610 million. And then the third one I track, I'm the only one tracking it because I don't want to waste my valuable resources of HOK and Flintco on this item because I really don't want to do this item, but it's kind of the cards we've been dealt is the money I really do have in my hip pocket to work with, which I've got about $220 million left in that original bond package. That won't buy a lot, but it's I track it because it's all I have right now, and that's in your packet as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Flintco to talk about the first 2 budgets and ask them anything you want to ask them, and then I'll come back up and talk about the third budget a little bit.
Hello, I'm Mike Atkinson. I'm the pre-construction manager on this, on the project here. So we're moving forward like we're gonna build this job. So we've been working with HOK and as their design evolves, the budget's been evolving. And what you have in front of you is where we're staying today. I was gonna go over the clarifications and assumptions a little bit just to kind of explain what's in the budget, what's not, so you kind of get a feel. This first budget is that 2,400 bed. We call it a 2,400 bed budget. It's really 2,328 rather than 2,228, but it's 2,328 is the actual count. But in the clarifications and assumptions, like I said, the budget was based on starting construction at the beginning of 2025, January, February, March, somewhere in there. We probably are going to do that on the behavioral care center. But that is, and we've kept what's different from the last budget we gave you on the SDs is that was all combined together. Now we've separated the behavioral care center from the detention center. So we have 2 projects now. So we keep track of that because the behavioral care is funded probably will get built, probably will start 2025. That's the thinking. It's a little bit ahead on design. So the detention center then might start another 6 months down the road or whatever, whenever the funding's available. So, so I wanted to point that out. This has kind of been considered the DD2 level of budget. End of August or September, I believe. The final design development will be done in September or around there. And we'll have a much more focused design and budget at that time. Let's see, I think I wanted to point out we're still carrying on the detention, we're still carrying quite a bit of contingency, about 16% contingency. I think that's good at this time because there's so many things that can still happen in the fluctuation of the time frame. And there's a few things when you look at this that is broke down into site, structure, architectural, as far as what's included, what's not included. I just want to kind of highlight, the site work, the budget, anything we have to do with that flood control, that Crutcho Creek, we don't have any money in there for, that's not good. That's just something else. So if the flood, we're staying out of the floodplain, if we have to do anything special to Crutcho Creek or anything like that, that's not in there. And structurally, there's nothing too special about that there. We do have, the budget does have, the bond, the grants for the rainwater harvesting and this kind of stuff, and the grants for the solar. These are money coming from other sources. We have some funding in there for the rain harvest, but those kind of things will still be fluctuating. So, but that is money coming from elsewhere. I guess the main thing also, once again, is the base bid is 2,328 beds, and that includes the behavioral care center, and these alternates then bring it down to the 1,800. And so the first, you can probably see the budgets, what the numbers are. That first budget for the 2,400 bed, 682 is where we're standing at right now, 682 million. To get down to 1,800, roughly 1,800 beds, we're thinking moving two pods to roughly, that's just kind of the theory is remove the two pods. It's roughly $70 million. So that gets us down to about 612, somewhere around the 600. And then there is a option to go to move some beds out of the behavioral health if you wanted to go even lower. So that's another 15 million. So that's kind of reading that there. Those numbers below that 682 are kind of, one is the detention, is the pre-construction services, but those other three items can fluctuate quite a bit. They're really on the owner's side of the budget, but something to consider when where that cost is going, where that money has to come from to pay for some of that stuff, the FF&E and owner's contingency. So that's basically, and then the detention center is separate from the BBC. So, and then so if you have any other questions there.
On the cost around the creek, are we ignoring a cost that we're going to have there, or is that something the county can take care of outside of Flint Co budget, or should we have money in the budget for that?
We intend to stay out of that creek. I don't see any need to be in there. So hopefully we dodge that.
That's what we're anticipating. Yeah.
Yeah. And could you clarify you had made some comments about, I think it's maybe stormwater retention or solar or something, that's coming back into the project. Can you clarify that a little bit?
I can. There's a federal grant that was put out there, and we applied for it for some rainwater harvesting and some solar energy. We haven't heard whether we won the grant or not. I think we're supposed to hear at the end of this month and the first of next month if we won that grant. If we win the grant, then we're not paying for it out of, the monies we currently have. We'll get some money from Washington DC to pay for those. If we do not win the grant, we'll just take them out of the design. Unless you really want them in there for some reason, or you can think of another way, or there's another grant out there we don't know about that we could go after. We're open-minded, HOK is open-minded, and always looking for other funding opportunities that exist to get some of these things in there. I think I had a call last week from a geothermal company wanting to participate in this project, and if they're going to pay for it, fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, that answers it. Thanks, Stacy. I do have a couple of ideas about that, but we can talk about them offline.
Well, and Mike, are those costs in your budget or not in your budget?
Yeah, the rain harvesting one, my mechanical team did take that in consideration. There's a big cistern, there's a double in piping, some, cause it's a symphonic, roof drain system that's a little bit different. So they did take that into account. It's just that it hasn't been further designed yet, so I don't know if it's enough or too much or whatever, but we do have that in there. The solar option, we never put in there. We never really had how much or where or anything like that. So the solar option is not in there. If we were to get a funding for the harvest rainwater, we do have some money in there. We'd have to rearrange just really what it costs, but we are carrying some in there. If it was said we're not going to do it, there'd be a deduct on that. You know, thing.
Recently, HOK presented some value engineering thoughts, like shortening the ceiling heights, shortening the hallway widths. Is that in this number?
Yeah, the corridors did shrink down. The penthouses, they got rid of all the penthouses that were up there, and the mechanical rooms are now down in the eye in the sky. That was a pretty good savings. There's been adds and deducts. There's still some ways I think we can shrink the square footage down. There's still some areas that are in flux, and how we treat those will be.
But the pricing we saw 4 months ago were 680 and 610. It's the same numbers today as we saw 4 months ago, so one would conclude they don't reflect the value engineering that HOK found.
They do. There's been a lot of change, a lot of ups and downs,
So-
and we're tracking that. We're trying to track that to see where you go, but there's still some questions to be answered. We've had these drawings for about a week and a half. We're going to keep working on it. I think we'll have a list of those ups and downs that you can kind of see what's going on, to see where they're saving, because they did reduce some square footage, yet the square footage from our SDs were based on the matrix and the programming square footage, so they had a lot of percentages. Now we've actually measured the job, and it actually is a little more than what we had square footage wise, but it's because it's the first time we've actually measured the drawings that are measurable now.
But the net effect to the value engineering is zero.
Yes, a little. Well, it's about $1 million.
Okay, $1 million.
Yeah, very.
So that would tell me our attempt at value engineering we've been discussing for several months had no success.
It's not finished yet.
What we're seeing today. So are we heading towards a direction that value engineering is not going to save us any money?
We'll keep going that way. That's to say that there's lots of questions still to be answered. Well, the value engineering will continue on through this whole thing.
But so far, the value engineering has had no success. Is that true?
It doesn't appear.
Yeah.
That's to say, there's as many increases as decreases. This early in the game, there's going to be, I'm afraid, there's going to be a lot of increases and decreases. The idea is just we can track that to show it, but what it's showing is right now it's a zero sum right now.
Because I know for Heather and Steve, that's been a thought,
Or
and
hope.
a hope, and the net effect is zero so far.
Yeah, so far it's like I say, you'll be able to see the differences, but
Well, then
what's changed.
you
but it
said the
hasn't-
actual footage is up over programmed square footage. Do you know by how much? And is there an opportunity to
No,
get back to programmed square footage?
Yeah, there's a chance.
That might be a question for HOK.
I guess I would ask HOK, who's been talking about value engineering for 4 months to us, Why no success overall? Does Jeff or Kurt or Stacy have a thought?
Well, I've reviewed these numbers, looked at them last night. What I saw was a pretty good increase in electrical costs. That's what ate up the savings that they found, by and large. And I'm hearing that on all projects, mechanical and electrical systems are just continuing to hurt all projects, including this one.
Mike, I think what changed analysis that when you get to a milestone, you can say this went up, this went down, and maybe
Yeah.
talking to us about that and then finding
Do that.
what opportunities there are in those things that went up to fix that and
Yeah.
bring it back down would be a worthwhile conversation for you
There's-
guys to have and maybe bring us the result of that conversation.
lot
We're
of-
happy to participate in it
A
too.
lot of these budgets are conceptual. A lot of these numbers are conceptual, because they're just not finished drawings yet. So we're trying to anticipate as best we can what the completed drawings are gonna cost. And I think it's good we need to be conservative at this point and not try to be just what's the cheapest we could be, because I don't think that's gonna do us any good yet until we know exactly really know where we're going. So, we are being a little conservative here on this, but it's, until we cut the money, we need to be sure that that's what we're doing. We're talking about, well, we do this, what do you think about that? Well, yeah, it sounds like yeah, absolutely, that's gonna save us money, but how much? Until we see what actually develops, I'm just guessing. So, anyway, we're being conservative.
I think it would be helpful to know what those increases were. And I'm sure you've considered this, but if the electrical was significantly higher, which obviously I'm aware of that happening in our industry right now, are there workarounds to other systems or things like that could help alleviate that cost? Again, just a thought.
Another thing that's different for you this month is, at your suggestion, there is a second estimate in here from a company called White and Associates. It's independent of Flintco, and they didn't price it, schematic designs. This is their first pricing on design development. And when you look at the two sets of numbers, they're fairly close. They did different methods, and you can tell they have different line items and so forth, but they kind of arrived in the same ballpark, 2 or 3% from each other. So I think, the numbers, we're not happy with where we're at, but I think they're pretty accurate where we're at.
Based on other projects around the country. Yeah. But,
Yeah, I
it's
just think a
ongoing
thorough
problem.
vetting of systems and kind of looking at that again and understanding that certain things escalate. Right now, it's volatile, but to just look at what other options, or if there are other options, to see if we have to go to a completely different system or approach, to be open-minded to that.
We are certainly at that point. We're not far enough, we're far enough along that, we've got a lot of options to go to, and they just have to make those decisions which way they wanna go. And when that happens, we can start really, maybe see some more difference in the numbers.
And then January of next year starts not happening on the detention center. So it seems like, I don't know, pick a year after that or something and go ahead and put the inflation in there. Let's be real about that. That's not a real number.
We're carrying like 3% inflation, contingency on the detention, 2% on the behavioral care right now, plus the other contingencies. But that only carries us about a year. If it takes longer than that, there'll be more.
Other comments from us? Any public comments? Thank you.
And you guys had been asking me for a construction budget for the money we really do have. It's in your packet. Right there. The bond funds, you'll recall, was a 260, but that was for two projects. The sheriff had his project, so they left this project with the 250. That's where we start. And then the next line is actual interest to date. That's a real number. The next line is projected interest, which is just a ballpark guess. But that's our revenue side. The expenses are real and accurate. And then that tells you what we have remaining. The things that I've got locked in is the contractor's fee, and we do have a number in here for FF&E. It will change and fluctuate, but just to try to get a balance of how much money I've really got for hard construction. And which would lead to the next page, which is kind of projects bed counts, what the budget is for that and how much we're short. And what we could, the bottom line there is what we could probably really do with the money we have. And that's pretty similar to last time. And you know, this chart just didn't change very much.
So are those modifications to the existing plan that just take out all but 700 beds? You still build the entry and the courthouses and the public spaces and the core support services and just then bid? Or is that a different project altogether?
No, I think we keep the core spaces that you're talking about, intake and sally ports and kitchens, laundries, and you're just going to start eliminating housing. Housing just starts disappearing till you get down to your budget, which gives you a pretty small number of beds, which isn't enough to replace the current facility. And it's not a good option because you end up running two facilities. But it's a hand of cards we've been dealt if we can't solve the financial problem. And I think, you know, I know Javier's got some ideas on that, and maybe we might start moving those forward.
Well, and it seems like in your analysis of the current state of things, we have enough money to build 730 beds. Maybe that's part of that. About what we talked about before, the brief on the current situation.
Yeah,
Now we can build 730 beds.
Yeah,
And not operating two
you've been wanting to
facilities,
see
and
it.
we can't afford to do it. That's the current.
Yeah,
That's where we are right now.
That's where we are, exactly. And you had been asking for a drawing to see that. I just haven't wasted my resources in drawing something that I don't want to build and you don't want to build.
Well, but I think we should show it. I would still like to see a plan that says, okay, this is what we built in this
And I think
phase one. And let's,
in their spare time one of these days.
well, I get that. And yeah, but I think if we're going to really cast the vision for where we are today, let's show how much it doesn't work by showing that kind of stuff.
Just a graphic that shows the public what we have could help visualize.
Stacy, on your final page, where's the land in here? I'm sure it's somewhere.
It's not, I was able to pay for that out of a different budget, so it didn't hit your budget.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I raised my hand and Javier nodded me up if it's okay. One of the comments, just a brief comment to make on, if you did.
Jeff, you'll introduce yourself, please.
Oh, yeah, Jeff Bradley with HOK Architecture. And if you built a smaller facility like that, you'd have to run that one, and you'd have to run another one. And I can tell you right now that Oklahoma County and the people who are operating this jail, you don't have not only the budget money, but you don't have the people to run two different facilities.
And I think that's part of the message.
Yeah, but to draw a drawing that shows that size, we can cut some housing pods off and yeah, we already looked at that too.
Okay, two questions. One, when we talk about the two facilities, I go back to DOJ because, you know, I work for the government, so I'm always scared of them. But having said that, would that, in my mind, would that really be an option for DOJ based on what you got going now? To keep the current jail and have a smaller, newer jail?
I don't know how they would view that. That jail down there right now has an end of life to it. I can't tell you the date and time, but there's so many problems with the physical plant of that facility, from plumbing to structural to cell sizes and everything else. Um, so the DOJ is watching that. So is obviously the health department's watching it.
Okay.
I don't know how long that facility is going to last, but when that facility goes out of play, you better have 1,800 or 2,000 beds somewhere else to put your inmates in, or that's going to be where this community gets in a lot of trouble.
Okay. And then my next question is on where you say the Behavioral Health Center is currently fully funded by ARPA monies. Usually there's some kind of timeline on.
Yeah, the timeline is December 31st of this year. I have to have all the money encumbered to the contractor. So the schedule is to bring a guaranteed maximum price contract back to this board this fall and have it buttoned up before December 31st. And then they'll break ground, and they've got 2 years to cut the ribbons on that facility in order to spend the money and spend it correctly.
Okay, thank you.
So I think I have probably more of a comment at this point because I'm not sure we got discussion and possible action. I think that's mostly for parliamentary procedure on you guys' end. But so there are several questions being posed, but I'm also looking at the agenda and understanding the items. So I really want to understand a full picture because most of my questions have to do with like what the role is for this body, and I think we opened up there even in item 2. And then what it is that we can propose and recommend. So what work do we need to do to provide some solutions from this body? What insight can we provide to the team that's been assembled, to the construction manager and the designer and to the staff? And then what recommendations we need to propose. I'm mostly saying all that to say that I'm not really in a good spot to suggest anything until I understand the implications of item 4 and 5 on the agenda. So that's, it's more of a comment than a question thing at this point, but I've got thoughts about this, but they get informed by probably item 5 as well.
Well, after we get, you can always open 3 back up and have further discussions when we get.
All right. Well, maybe that was for the chair then, not for you. Thanks.
Let's implement the Sandino thought, please. What's next? 4. Are we done with questions on 3? I'm going to go back to 3 in a bit. All right, let's go to item 4, please.
All right, we have an update on,
And this is Kurt.
sorry, my name is Kurt Pardee with HOK. Thank you. I have a presentation that I sent to Cassie.
This is Cassie, too.
Cassie 2, thank you. There it is, that's it. Thank you. Always start with just kind of covering, where we're at in the project and the things that we've been working on. So Cassie, if you could go to the next page. This week we have a number of team members coming to town. We're meeting tomorrow, going over the security systems design and the IT systems design for both the jail and the behavioral care center. So we have team members coming in tomorrow to do that pretty much all day. We're going to spend some time with the county personnel, showing them different security options that we have and how we're designing the surveillance camera systems, intercoms, and all those things for the project. And then the following day, we have the engineering team in town to go over the HVAC systems, electrical, plumbing, and all that kind of stuff in the building. This is part of the design development process to bring the owner along with what's going to be in the facility. We also on Thursday have a sustainability presentation. This kind of refers back to just energy efficiency, water efficiency, the normal things we're doing in this project. We're not designing the building to be LEED certified or anything like that, but we are trying to take advantage of grants that are out there for photovoltaic systems and water savings and things like that. So we're talking about those issues as well on Thursday. Upcoming schedule, just a little bit of follow up. A couple weeks ago, we went down to Montgomery, Alabama, toured precast precast cells being built on the prison site in Alabama. I can't remember the exact name of the town. What was it? Thank you. Yeah. So, but it was a precast system. We liked what we saw. I think that the county, we have been focusing on precast cells as our solution for this project, and it was a good system. They build them on site, and they just crane them into place on the building pad. It's really well. It looked really good. So we were really impressed with that. We're doing a different precaster. We're touring that in Belton, Texas in early August. I think, I know the Flintco team has set that up. I think it's August 8th. So we're planning to go there with another team to look at that system. And, again, trying to keep competition in the project, make sure we have multiple options as the project gets closer and closer to bidding. Go back just a second, if we, thank you. Other milestone dates coming up. I think we've talked about most of these already. I don't need to really spend a lot of time on them. The BCC is going to have completed design development around August 23rd, and then we'll focus on wrapping up the construction documents as quickly as we can after that, so Flintco can get their ARPA GMP finalized in December of 2024. Also, starting to we would hope to start construction early in 2025 on the BCC project, and that would need to be complete by the end of 2026. And that kind of goes to your question, Joanne, about the ARPA funds being public funds and needing to be allocated and spent by the end of 2026. Jail construction would also begin in 2025, and we're looking probably at the late in August in 2027 for completion of that. Next. A couple of things we just wanted to bring to your attention, and again, this was kind of touched on, but the numbers show increase in the amount of inmates that you currently have at your facility. As much as just 5 months ago, we were just a little over 1,200 inmates. Now we're a little over 1,500 inmates. And so, it's increased significantly. And I just only say this because it is, I think a lot of people have questioned, is 1,800 beds what we need to build here? And I think it's a small facility for this community based on the current bed counts that we're seeing. But the number of inmate beds has come up in the last few months. And we see that likely continuing. Also, if you look at the circles to the right, the circle to the right there, 85% of the inmates that are in your facility are medium and maximum security. So when I hear people asking, well, just build more dormitories, it's less expensive. That's really not an option here. We need cells. We can do multiple occupancy cells, double bunk cells. We need to have a fair amount of maximum security cells as well. So there's only so much cheapening of this facility that we can do as we do the design for you, because you need to have appropriate cells for the types of inmates that you have. Next. This just kind of goes back to our original calculation, trying to show, how it made sense to get to 1,800 beds. This was done back in March when your inmate count was down at 1,254. As Stacy mentioned earlier, you should always have 15% additional beds in your bed count, because you don't know what level of classification your inmates are going to be in your facility on any given day. So you need to have that flexibility to have open cells and open beds to put people in, either their minimum, medium, or maximum. And as we're seeing, the bigger portion of your inmates are medium and maximum security inmates. So this was showing with the DOC inmates that you also have to house in your facility until they're picked up by the state. You actually needed a 2,000 bed facility. And so, I know we want to look at an option. We want to look at, a smaller facility to try and get down to, what the current construction funds are. But you need to realize the county needs to have more beds than that. So that's just part of that narrative we're going to try to have to put together for you. Also, the DOC on average holds between 200 and 300 inmates in your jail. So that's a significant amount, and we need to account for that as we design this facility. Okay. So we've started working with the county, with Brandy, with the jail management regarding staffing. We need to put together a staffing plan because the other part of this problem is having enough funds to properly staff your facilities. You do not properly staff the facility you have now. So, the starting point that you're coming from is below average, definitely. And so that needs to be taken into account. And as we move into the design of this facility and start looking and talking about staffing, it's really important that we understand how it's going to be managed. So we've developed this diagram where this is our base point as we begin and we're looking at both 1,800 bed and 2,400 bed solutions. It can be anywhere within that, but really 1,800 bed is the minimum. So, we're looking at the different types of management in the facility. The direct supervision is how this building is being designed. And we also are incorporating what we're calling an eye in the sky, which enables the county to reduce staffing at night when inmates are in their cells, and they can be managed properly that way. So we're looking at different options to come up with the staffing plan, and then also to being able to reduce it at times, so that we can help you reduce the staffing cost. So we have different levels where we're showing locations in the facility where you will have captains managing, you'll have shift commanders, you'll have unit managers, you'll have direct supervision officers in housing units, and we're showing where that will be, starting to number that, and it really helps us to understand and to work with your staff to help them understand, the amount of people it will take to manage this facility, just like what they've done on your existing facility. I mean, they have a staffing plan for their existing facility. It helps them come up with what they need for funding. And as I mentioned, they have not gotten that amount of funding. So, it's underfunded currently. We don't want to go into a new facility and be underfunded, certainly, for operating it if we don't have to. So that's why we're talking about that now. Next, this is just a quick snapshot of the type of information we're looking at. We're working with your jail management and talking about all the different types of officers, what they're doing, the type of management needed with those officers. They use a lot of civilian staff right now for things not for detention operations, but for support of those operations to help reduce their costs. So, we're counting all that, looking at it. We're also locating where all these people will be in the new design. So, as we develop this design, it's important that jail management understands, where their officers are going to be, where civilians are going to be, and how that all works. So we're looking at the basis for the management portion of the facility and all the support areas, and then also looking at different allocations for the different size of housing. So 1,800 beds, 2,400 beds are the two big groups of columns on the right there, and that will vary. Obviously, it increases staff as you add inmates to the facility. Next. And I'm going to hand it to Jeff. Okay.
Thanks, Kurt. Again, Jeff Bradley, HOK. This is really relevant, and these are good current numbers of major projects going on around the nation. Again, what's happened since COVID and there was a 41% increase across the country in construction costs during an 18-month period alone. Over the past 10 years, I haven't seen it go below a 5% increase annually over just about the past 10 years. About 10, right about 10 years ago, there was a 3 or 4% year, but usually 6% or above for the most part, especially because of what these buildings are made out of. It's concrete and steel, and those prices are pretty significant. And one of the things to look at really is not just the bed counts, but these are large facilities. But some people, there's two different things people focus on: the cost per square foot. And the New York one for Brooklyn, that's somewhat of an anomaly just because of how expensive it is to do business literally in downtown New York. That's a 23-story skyscraper. Um, and so I put it up there. The status of it, that's kind of important too. Under construction and in design, so and then built. And the two big costs are the cost per square foot and then cost per bed. A lot of people like to look at cost per bed. Although where you see differences with that is it a brand new facility or is it an expansion and renovation by just adding housing? Because then that doesn't always have the true cost to it. So if you look where Oklahoma's numbers fall, especially in cost per square foot, you're right in where the other large ones that are going on in the nation right now. That's where those hit. Alabama's under construction. Those prices are from about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And Alabama's cost to Oklahoma's cost, fairly relative, I think, and Flinko could probably verify that. Probably too much of a break from that. But very significant numbers. And I wanted to put this together for you because so many people talk about, oh my gosh, why has it gone up? Well, we didn't go up, the market's gone up. And this supports it and backs that up. So anyway, that's it for that slide. Is there another slide after this one, Kurt? Yeah, but some of the comments that y'all brought up earlier, and you have very good concerns, Joanne, and you guys have really good questions. Sandino, you made a point. You didn't want to really talk about where we should go from here after what you've learned today and until you heard what Stacy, Mike, and Kurt and all had to say. Because of some of the things that were said earlier, there's a couple points I think I wanted to bring up, especially regarding the PR stuff that you guys were talking about earlier. One of the things that's been, and I've seen and had a lot of people talk to me about the anti-jail folks out there. One of the misnomers that they compete, they repeat repeatedly that's really incorrect. They say all of our service, the jail should be built downtown because all of our services are right next to the jail and they can just go there. It's not true. Right now, when they come out, there's 4 ways they leave. Friends or family pick them up. They can walk away. They can get on the diversion hub bus, or they can walk away and they hand them bus tokens if they tell them they want to take a bus. That's pretty, and other than transfers to state prison or to other places around the U.S., but those are smaller numbers compared to the day-to-day thing. They're concerned about people leaving the jail and just wandering around, whether it's that part of the city of Oklahoma City or if it's Del City. Right now, that's not a problem down here. Now there's a lot of homeless nearby and homeless areas nearby, and a lot of them wander back to that. But the majority are picked up by friends and family. There's the diversion hub bus. So the diversion hub's not right here. They're actually taking on a bus if they want to go. Well, the same thing could happen at the new jail. And same thing for bus tokens. A route can be changed. So seeing and the major services that people utilize, especially the mental health folks, after they get out, they're 11 to 12 blocks away. So when they get out, they're not always just going to wander over there. They kind of go back and do their own thing. So to say everything's right by the jail and they're there, that's not correct. And we built in services in the new facility I'll talk about in a moment that actually address some of this to help everybody out. You talk about the DOJ and the feds. One of the things they're going to look at, they look at how many people, not just lawsuits, but they look at the people who pass away, whether it's suicides, whether it's whatever reason, drugs. It just happens. The one I can point to is the California Department of Corrections. They had 1 inmate die per week. They were averaging 1 inmate dying per week just from lack of health care. So they came in and took over the entire state prison system and built a several billion-dollar facility, and state had no say, and the feds handed them the bill and said, pay it. And that's pretty much how it goes if they get to that point. If the facility here that you have, it stays the same and the same, it's product in, product out, and that doesn't change, that's not going to help you with them. And in fact, they've already got their attention to them, so they literally just hand you the bill. Something else I wanted to bring up also is cost escalation. So we're talking about if everything goes right now. Those are the numbers that we got from Flintco. This is if everything goes right now. And from what Stacy said, what the public needs to realize right now, cost escalation lately, 10% a year is not out of the norm. And at a $600 million building or project, you're talking $60 million a year. You're talking $5 million a month in cost escalation. That's money for every month it's delayed. That's $5 million going out the window. And that's realistic. That's at 10%. So if you want to cut it in half and say 5%, which is really low over the past 10 years, you're $2.5 million per month. It's real, and people don't get that, but that's part of the message I think that needs to be shared, especially to the people of influence in the county that can help make a difference here. Couple other areas to bring up, and in all fairness to Flintco, when they were asked to price this, we were just starting pretty much schematic design. There wasn't a design and a hard design that they could price to, so there was some expert guesstimating in that. We have given those areas that you mentioned earlier, Steve, of wall heights coming down, reducing the size of BCC, reducing the hallway widths and the penthouses. Those are all very significant VE items. But on some of the other ones too, there was some give and take on some adds and subtractions, and I think everybody would be interested to see what their ups and downs and have them share that with you. But we made some significant VE efforts on identifying some things here. Kurt mentioned the eye in the sky. A number of firms have tried that around the country to try and drop the penthouses down into the eye. And so we have two things we're doing here. One is by doing the eye in the sky, we're reducing your labor costs, and your labor costs are going to be reduced by $9 million a year just by doing that. That doesn't count the savings by taking the penthouses up there and dropping them down into the eye in the sky. Other people have wanted to do that. It's very difficult to pull off design-wise, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing-wise, and we've got that figured out for you. And further identifying that and working with Flintco on that as well. We mentioned I heard Mike mention inflation of for 3% for one building, 2% for the other. Stacy had in 5.5% inflation. Again, that's if everything goes well. So back to the cost escalation features. One of the another thing too that you're getting here that the public needs to realize, this isn't just another jail and a bunch of housing units where people are coming in, you're holding them, they go to court, and then they either go to prison or they go home. What's different about this now that people really need to realize is we've taken we modified, and we've never done this to this level and degree. We've modified your intake, booking, and release areas. And we've incorporated two different areas into that are very unique. And one is, we call it a diversion area. It's in the intake area. And these were where people from your diversion hub, teams, your Department of Mental Health, or whomever is designated to work in here, will actually have office space for when these people come in. And they can help identify and work with who's going to get diversion and go over to the BCC. The BCC is a fairly new concept for a lot of the country. We've been doing it for a number of years now. Just see, you really, well, I think I have the numbers over here. You've got a modified intake, booking, and release. And with that, you have a diversion office area in intake that can divert them over to the BCC. At release inside this area now, we also have more office space before they leave, and they can start working with them. And we talked to Brandy about it more than 24 hours in advance before somebody goes. You have your community services people, and that we call that area community services, built into the release area. And with office space where people for diversion hub can work, the teams people can work there and have office there and work with people. The Department of Mental Health can have people staffed there. The Homeless Alliance can be in there. So before they leave, they're getting a whole bunch of new help and services. They have some now, but we've got designated spaces built into this to help the function of the facility and the benefits for people moving on. Then we got the Behavioral Care Center. The Behavioral Care Center is now 60 bed, 40 beds for males, 20 beds for females. What's unique about that too is one of the things I want to talk about, Davidson County, which is Nashville. And that's been very successful. It's been open 3 years now. They've got good data in Nashville. And they've had a 50% reduction in their recidivism in Nashville of the frequent flyers. Those are the ones that cause the most time and issues with staff because they're coming back and forth all the time. So a 50% reduction in recidivism is very significant on your numbers and your jail numbers. Also inside your jail, instead of just having an infirmary and or a area for a suicide watch, if you ever walked into one of those, they're loud, they're noisy, it's scary, it's very intimidating, it's hard to get people to work in there. We've added extra beds now. You have in there 112 beds identified for people in crisis. And those are people who have severe mental health issues, but are also violent in nature that need to be balanced, medicated, and such. And once we get them to that stage, we have another 256 mental health beds built into your jail for these people who actually need more continued treatment. The housing units are designed to step down from people from maximum to medium to lower risk, and they can either be released from there and or they can go over to the BCC from there. Nobody has those type of bed numbers. The things that you're having built in there, instead of we just could have done housing unit and beds for people to just say, now you're in your regular jail housing, you've got a very focused program here that's unique, and yet people in the country are going to come from all over the country to come see it. Just like they go do in Nashville now. They go all over the country to go see their BCC, and also Indianapolis that we did. They're also going to come here to see what you're doing inside your jail with all these unique spaces. So up in the front of the building now, in the front of the house that we talked about, you have new services there that you don't necessarily have now. We got family reunification services so people can learn to get along before they're released and they go back home into another home environment where it's really challenging. It allows them to learn to get along with some supervising counseling. All the jail housing has multi-purpose rooms in it, every single one of them, and that's can be used in a lot of different areas and functions. You don't have that now. We also have medical, they're all set up for medical distribution where they can do that in the housing unit. You have recreation in every single housing unit right now. The jail right now has recreation up on the top floor, and you can't put 1,500 people up there every day. It just doesn't happen. But every single housing unit now will also have rec built into it. One of the issues right now, your infirmary's up at the top of the building. It's difficult to have people in crisis and they need medical, or even the staff has to get up and down or back and forth. Your new facility doesn't have any elevators. So that'll be pretty much a non-issue. So there's a lot of very significant different talking points. This isn't just another jail that's going to be built. You're having something that's unique, special. It'll help reduce your numbers. It'll help the community. It'll help the people that are in there. It'll help attract more workers. And the biggest thing, and I think the biggest enemy that you guys have that you're facing right now is time. Because the longer you wait, that's more it's going to cost. The need's not going away. Anyway, thank you.
Questions, comments?
If I haven't used up my time today, the BCC, does it stand on its own system-wise? Central plant, I assume it does and doesn't need the jail to be built beside it?
It does, and we're actually presenting that tomorrow to the team. We've had a lot of discussions about that recently. Yep.
And we have a lawsuit that's gonna finish in 2028 and a project to start in 2025. I guess somebody knows how to make that work.
It's just a risk you're willing to take or not. I don't have an answer or solution for it.
Do we apply for a building permit and start, or do we start without it, or do we hope the lawsuit's done?
I write my own building permits
Right.
to
I'm
myself.
I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
so, and I guess maybe we're gonna get there next, maybe we're there, maybe that's why you're back up here, but, I mean, just to understand, no injunctions have been filed, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so you guys are in litigation with the city, but I'm not sure, I guess I'm not exactly clear on how that impacts the ability to move any of these processes forward until a judge would say an injunction to you being able to proceed, right?
I think that's correct.
And I sense that the behavioral health may be zoned properly according to the city of Oklahoma City right now, and it may not require a special use permit.
It's county
Oh.
property.
I'll have to check on that.
That's one of my thoughts, that
We would need the city to agree with us, or hope that they would before we,
I don't think so. Does the county have to seek permits from the city for land that the county owns at present time?
I never have.
Thank you.
so I think to help Steve along, how many projects have you issued your own building permits on, Stacy?
Uh, dozens and dozens. This room was built, I don't know, 10 years ago, for example.
so why did we ask them in the first place for something they got? We asked them for a special use permit.
Hey,
We're just trying to get along, and if we
don't-
can't
yeah.
get along, we'll do it anyway.
Don't confuse zoning with building permits. They're two
Right.
entirely separate issues.
So help me just, so the zoning is okay for the BCC, but not for the jail, which is why we can do that.
I'll
I
have
see
to double.
somebody nod and tempted to talk.
Get up.
And Commissioner Davidson, you introduce yourself, please.
Commissioner Miles Davidson. So the jail requires a special use permit. A hospital would create a need for a special use permit. A behavioral health center does not require that. This is actually zoned I3. This slides right in there. We could walk down tomorrow and we could start building that. And that's according to the district attorney and everything that they've told us. As far as the jail goes and permitting and your question about why did we do that, the precedent was set when we built the one down the street. And it was strongly suggested that we discuss with them and try to get them to play along with us. We did everything that we possibly could. We've been advised by legal that we are sovereign and we can move forward. So that's what we've done and that's what we're doing. So, is it a risk of taxpayer dollars to do it? I can tell you that the purchase of the land and the use of the land is not a risk because we will use it one way or the other. I spend over $1 million a year in storing court records right down the street. I could build that building down there, and in 5 years, I've got my money back. But by us being able to put the BHCC there and 75 foot away, Jeff didn't talk about this. We're going to be 75 foot off of the jail. Sounds like it's a bad idea. What it does is it actually allows us to charge Medicare and Medicaid, which means zero off the top, which is a huge savings to us as a county and to the taxpayers that we are currently pay for now. So that was another reason to separate it. It was also another reason to do a separate facility and plants and so on and so forth. So it's a standalone facility. Okay. Any other questions?
Other questions, other thoughts? Why don't we move to item 5? We'll come back to 4. Stacy, let's go to item 5, please. Then we'll go back to 3 and 4, the Zandino method.
Well, item 5 is basically a straightforward question. The commissioners want to know what your thoughts were. The time is running short on the ARPA monies for the behavioral care center. So we're either going to break ground and build that behavioral care center on January 2nd, or they're going to take all that money and repurpose it. In order to have time to repurpose it by December 31st, they kind of need an answer at this month's meeting. So it's your community. You're the citizens. Do you want a behavioral care center or do you want to repurpose the money? It's just a question, and they'd like a vote on that.
Do you need a, can I move that we would proceed with the behavioral health center?
Yes.
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 That recommendation will go to the county commissioners in a week. Thank you.
All right, anything else we would like to discuss under items 3, 4, and 5?
I do have I have some questions, I think, in relation to item 2, based on hearing items 3 and 4. If that's okay.
Item 2,
see.
3,
All right.
4, and 5 we're discussing.
Great. So I would like to get a little better sense of the role of the county in jailing citizens in its county. So it sounded like earlier you sort of suggested that this is a community issue, which I've always agreed with. I had the unfortunate distinction of being quoted in one of the publications, and giving my thoughts on how this sort of has progressed. And it feels like the county has definitely gotten stuck, and I think the example I used was like burying the parent that nobody else wants to sort of deal with. So I do think it's a community issue, but I have always assumed that it's the county's responsibility to provide a detention facility, just in the way that our criminal justice system works. So I would want to understand that just a little bit better, because I'm hit a couple of other points so that maybe I'm not asking a bunch of questions, because I want to understand the idea that, like, the city of Oklahoma City doesn't have a jail. This is the jail, and the county has acquiesced to that, even though it sounds like we're not getting. I mean, the county is also at odds with the city on where to locate said jail, right? So why not just say no to Oklahoma City and they build their own jail, and the county would be the receiving place for the places that aren't Oklahoma, because Edmond does have a jail, other places do have. So I'm not as clear about that, and since you brought it up, I just want to understand, like, what that really means in the context of the county's responsibility to provide this facility. Because then when we talk about the DOJ and things like that, it sounds like the easiest out would just to be to shut the jail down and tell all the municipalities to figure it out and build a 700 bed jail for everybody, everything that in Oklahoma County that's not a municipality. I'm being a little sort of, a little extreme in the statements, but I want to understand what the responsibility and the obligations are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the statute's clear that the counties have a county jail. That's something the legislature set up way back. So we do own and operate it for the benefit of the public, but it's for the public. Um, so uh, could the county go away and the cities run it? Simple statute change, yeah, the answer is yes. So it's not, that's why I say it's not just a county
Well,
problem.
No, I may not have phrased my question well.
Well, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
That why do we house the city's prisoners for them? Where did my commissioner go? He's the right guy to answer that.
Well, so this goes back to what we talked about earlier, though. So let me sort of narrow it back in, because again, those are kind of the extreme sort of examples. If the county has an obligation to house, for the sake of the criminal justice system, people who law enforcement requires to be detained, right? Then how does that obligation sort of fit into um, the public sort of responsibility? I mean, yes, the county is the public. I mean, it's not just the cities, right? So um, where are we in we have a funding gap for all of these things. So we have 200 and something $1 million, sort of, by your estimates. That's not enough to produce the facility that we need. I'm not clear on what the obligations are for, outside of the county, the other public entities, government entities, or others to participate in solving this problem. Maybe that's a better way to put it. If we get our PR and our messaging together, what do we expect that to change in regards to the funding challenge, right? Or because that's really the issue. I don't hear you guys saying you don't want to operate a jail. Maybe some folks might suggest they want to operate less, right? But we're not suggesting we don't want to operate a jail, but we are suggesting that there are not enough resources in place to fund the kind of jail that needs to be built. So what do we expect? What would we expect to change? That's what I'm really trying to understand.
I may not be the right person to answer these questions. I wish the commissioner was still here, but I know they enter into contracts with every city to house their prisoners for them.
Part of the reason for that is that the local jails, Edmond, whatever community, does not have maximum security facilities. They do not have probably even medium security facilities. They're mostly holding tanks. And so the county, by statute, has a responsibility to have enough beds for the county and also for the Department of Corrections. So it is a community issue in that sense. And we could just say, hey, Oklahoma City, you figure it out, go build your own facility. Edmond, do not send the 2 guys that got picked up yesterday, don't send them to us. You find some way to keep them somewhere. That is not the intent of the county facility. The county has to be the recipient of all those detainees that do not fall into the purview of a safe detainment facility in those smaller communities. And we've had a great working relationship with Oklahoma City. I think at one point in time, we're getting $3 million a year to house the city's detainees. It's down to 300,000 now, maybe 250. I don't remember. But
The projected contract, I think they paid exactly zero.
Well-
What was in our lawsuit.
obviously we're on the winning side of that relationship.
And this is fine because I'm not sure what else we need to sort of discuss. I guess I just wanted to make sure I understood your commentary because I agree that we should have a clear sort of bit of talking points about what this issue is for the community. It's part of why I mentioned. That's why I used probably a poor analogy that I did when I was asked about what this situation is. I mean, the county, by and large, I mean, we got a few unincorporated areas of the county, right? But like by and large, you guys don't generate the traffic for the jail. You don't actually pass very many laws that I'm aware of that generate traffic for the jail. You prosecute those things, right, on the court side, and then you house the folks. So that tends to be from the state or tends to be from the municipal level. So I understand those mechanics. I do think we need to clarify some of that process. We've said we're going to do that, and that makes a lot of sense. I do want to think about the outcome because today what we've heard is a lot of conversations about all the things we don't have, and we've agreed to move forward with one thing that we do have. I think at some point, maybe it'll be the next meeting, you will have reasons why you want us to move forward with some process on the actual detention facility. I don't know if you're asking for that from us today or not, but I imagine that's looming because we just got all of the reasons why. What is it, $5 million a month of that we can anticipate in escalation and things like that. I understand all those things make sense. I guess I want to understand from this board's level, making recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. What can we do? Where are we at now to sort of move the process forward in thinking about what the county's needs for a jail facility? So if I'm hearing that, I mean, there's an obligation by the county, as tacit as it might be, to provide adequate housing for those folks detained in the criminal justice system, then it would seem like 700 beds is not sufficient. Like we know that. If I'm overreading what you were saying about the county doesn't have a lot of consequence for not solving this problem without community input, then I say like build 700 beds and let's let all of the sort of government entities in Oklahoma County come to the table and figure out what we do beyond that. Anyway, that's what I'm not sure I'm understanding.
We have the statutory obligation, to have that facility, and it needs to be the correct size, and it needs to meet all the codes. And you've heard what that's going to cost. And short of being able to provide that, I guess then you get in the business of saying who can come and who can't. And those that don't get to come and house in our jail, and they got to figure it out on their own, that's where the consequences are really going to be.
And I think going
That's
back,
what that was trying, the point I was trying to make. The consequences aren't really necessarily with us. It's with those that it's like, you can't come. You'll figure it out for yourself.
right, and I think because we are mandated by statute, it would be irresponsible of the county to say, hey, we're not building anything, Oklahoma City, go build your own. Go find your own property to build on, and, you know, the whole NIMBY thing starts all over again for another
And-
entity.
And I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just trying to understand from the initial comments that were made. I'm just trying to understand what that means. There's not enough money. So another question I had is I thought I understood in this process that there were some additional bonding capacity. So I don't know if that is a conversation. It still doesn't solve the problem, right? As far as what the funding gap is, but I understood that there was some additional ability to, to maybe float or push an additional encumbrance there. But what is the output? Let's assume that we have a strategy and talking points that say, oh yes, people acknowledge we have a problem. Well, are we really talking about the city of Oklahoma City? Or are we talking about the citizens? I mean, what do we expect to change to meet the, $400 million gap, give or take, right? That's
This is going to be the reason for the education is that we need to make sure we prepare ourselves in the event that we do have to take a least desirable path of funding through a countywide sales tax. This is going to require a ton of education. For obvious reasons, the city, the chamber do not feel that an additional tax would be healthy as we're trying to recruit companies to the city. But the facts are we need to start looking at how we fund this project. The more education we start doing now of the general public, the better off we're going to be to react when we have to. I think we should consider other more creative financing opportunities. And perhaps the best way to do that is to consider the preparation of an RFQ, request for qualifications, for funding the entire project, and let the markets tell us what they think they can do in a competitive manner. And the county has the opportunity to review those options from a financial perspective. And then we come back and make those decisions based on your recommendations. But I think we need to look at funding the entirety of the project.
okay. I get as I'm thinking about this, portions of that, that makes a lot of sense. I guess are there financing? I feel like we had these conversations early on, and maybe there are more sort of thoughts that we have. But are there either financing vehicles, methods, or dollars that don't? Well, I guess how do we determine what those options are? We suggest an RFQ that would
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
The private sector then would come forward and say, we'll fund so much of this project, but we have to pay them back. That's the tricky thing. You got to have a revenue stream to pay them back with interest. And the county has no additional revenue streams to pay anybody back. So the only way that I can think of, the list I was asked to come up with, how you would pay that back would be through maybe housing federal inmates. They're the only ones that actually pay what it cost and then a little bit more. The little bit more becomes a profit margin, and you use that as a payback. And that's a long, long payback for the kind of money we're talking about. And I don't know if that's a great business model. So we have to get real. I think the companies are out there, so that's not the creative part. The creative part is how do you pay that revenue back?
And there are ways that a number of projects have been funded through additional revenue streams, which I understand some people misnomered as profit opportunities for the jail. However, they're not profit opportunities for the jail. They're means of funding the operation and service debt for the new facility. That could include Customs and Border Protection detainees, federal detainees of other types, as well as other DOC detainees. We need to be open to explore all of those opportunities. hence the higher bed count that was being considered. It's not a profit. It is a means of serving the community by servicing debt and providing additional revenues for operational expenses that the jail has. Right now, we have $30 million budget deficit annually in operations. Is that correct?
Ballpark, yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at ways to narrow that gap. We think we may, through a waiver, may be able to get another 15 to 20 million annually to help us. But that still leaves a gap of about 10 to 12 million dollars. So this is a multifaceted problem. First one we need to address is the construction. Second is going to have to be operation. But all of that is going to require a significant educational effort of the community.
Stacy, maybe you know, maybe HOK, you, Jeff, Kurt, you guys know. How do other counties fund their jails? They just go get bonds and we just didn't go get enough, or?
76 counties in Oklahoma have a sales tax dedicated to jail operations. One doesn't. That's us.
What about the list of projects of jail projects we saw? Do you guys have a sense of, in general, how those are funded?
Yeah, the majority of them are funded through general tax obligation bonds. They really are. And one word of caution to throw out there: if you ever to go for private financing, it's not a private jail. That's the part that gets people just aren't happy with. It's private financing. If you were to go that route, because it would still, the county would still operate it and everything else. It's not privately operated for profit.
And the model
for
would-
profit. Yeah, it's just someone's providing you the funding to get it built.
Right, and the model typically allows for ownership at the end of the term.
Yes, yeah. Or soon thereafter, they transition and you get your lease back quicker. There's different ways to do it. We do both. We do a lot of them, but the majority is bond. It really is.
Dumb question. Why don't we go get some more bond money?
Remember, the county only gets 9 cents on the dollar of ad valorem tax. The rest goes to schools, libraries, VOTAX. So I think the statute has, I saw it not that long ago. It limits you on your bonding capacity. And I think I've heard the treasurer say somewhere around 480 million is the maximum bonding capacity of this county, in that ballpark. So this ad valorem could have never funded this project under any scenario. That was just a falsehood. So it can fund part of it. And that's why I always harp on the sales taxes, where you really need to go to fully fund it and fund operations. Short of this public-private partnership concept, which we're obviously going to explore.
And the 480 capacity, we've used 250 of it here,
260.
260. Are there any others out there, or?
No, I
is that
think
all
that's
that
the only one we
applies?
have. I think it's the only one we have.
So
out
there's a
there.
little more capacity there if we chose to take advantage of it.
It's my understanding of that 480, maybe there's 100 million left that we could go after.
So
So let's stay with Javier's thought, and then we'll keep going. Are we going to pursue this thought of reaching out with an RFQ type process to some funding sources?
I think the county should consider looking at some RFQs that they're comfortable issuing to private funding sources. And we probably should make a decision once they've reviewed those options at some point in time, maybe the next meeting, to see what those options could look like once the county issues an RFQ.
As a committee, are we comfortable with Stacy working on this concept?
So it sounds like he's working on it already. So I think I want to choose my words really intentionally in this regard. I think I'm very interested in exploring sort of innovative or alternative financing approaches. I'm very leery for all the reasons that I joined this committee and this effort in overly endorsing the idea that instead of raising a tax, we would warehouse other folks. in the county government. I mean, there are places for doing those things, but now this is not a detention facility for us prosecuting sort of the criminal justice system of our county, but it's a kind of a, well, anyway, I'll leave it at that as far as my comments, but I am definitely interested in understanding everything from, and maybe the recommendation that we could make to the Board of County Commissioners but in understanding what the financing tools are. So if there is a potential with caveat, even if it's with an asterisk, additional bonding capacity. If I mean, I think you've done maybe some of this work, Stacey, to say if we did have some other taxing options, I wouldn't want to look at one option. I would want to look at sort of the menu of options on how these facilities get funded, and what so we can determine what the best option would be to raise revenue if we know that that's what the decision we're at least going to be asked to give feedback on. If that makes sense.
I mean, I'm interested in the idea of that funding, but I hear Stacy saying there's no capacity to pay it back. Do we need to understand what our capability is there, or we're just wasting potential partners' time putting out, preparing proposals, none of which we would have the wherewithal to accept?
So the way these projects work, at least projects I've been associated with, is the private entities identify all revenue options for these facilities. They have national models. They understand ways for in this case, the county jail to create revenue streams. They look at those in a realistic manner and make an educated decision as to what the maximum amount that could be loaned could be. I think that's an opportunity that is better suited for the private sector and their actuaries and people that look at all those numbers and give us some information. I know that there was a proposal about 11 or 12 years ago to do something similar in Oklahoma County. That was just a warehousing facility. And at that time, the revenue streams for the county would not be disclosed by the sheriff at that moment. So the project died. But there are ways for the private sector to understand the revenue streams. And I think that they can be very helpful and insightful for our purposes.
Is that a distraction from what we really need to do is go get some tax money? Is that going to leave people thinking, oh, they've got that solved, and we
In
don't
order to
have to
get
do anything else?
In order to get a tax issue going, we'd probably need to raise at least $500,000 to run a campaign. I don't know that the county has 500,000 just hanging around willing to invest in a campaign. It could be 500,000 to $1 million.
I think part of our, going back to the beginning of our conversation, I think part of our messaging is, do people know that we are the only county that is not funded in the same mechanism that everyone else is funded? Is there education about that? Let's educate them. I feel like if we lay all the cards out on the table and we're like, okay, Oklahoma City, we are housing your people. This is your people. And we let people know every other county is being funded this way. I don't see why we can't keep pushing this if we have the right messaging. I feel like it's almost solvable doing it this way. It's a little bit uncomfortable for me to try to make this something private, because this is our duty to our community. And I don't think it should ever be something that anyone makes a profit off of, but that's a personal opinion.
So for clarification, there's nothing private about this other than the loan that would be made to the county. The county still operates a facility. The county will own the facility at the end of the loan. It's a very common model that's been used throughout the nation. I think the issue that we have is, in addition to running a campaign, there would be an opposition campaign, guaranteed. So instead of spending 500,000, we may need to spend $1 million, $1.5 million to overcome an opposition campaign.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the messaging. And what I'm concerned with all of this, timeline. And if something's not done and something's not decided, pretty quickly here, somebody else is going to decide it for us. and we're not gonna like that. So whatever we've got to do that's most expedient to get the message out, we need to do that first. I'm not sure I understand all the complexities of what you all just discussed. So I'm not really sure my grandmother would, or my mother would, or my cousin would either. But what they do understand is the fact that they would, the result of not building a jail and the impact to them and their taxes. So some kind of way, y'all, we got to move on this. And if the messaging is what we need to do, it's how we do it and to whom we do it. And then with each group, we know it has to be a little different to ensure they're getting the same message. So I feel like we're spinning our wheels here.
Yeah. So, sorry. Yeah. So, I guess I can sort of maybe pull this back together since I initiated some of the discussion here. I mean, I think because I agree with you. I think we talked about the messaging and we've gotten some alignment on that. I mean, pretty straightforward and pretty quickly. Um, and it sounds like we have funding gaps that go. And so the way I'm thinking about this is that the talking points, the message, I think is best suited to coincide with an understanding of understanding the financial picture that we know today and that we can anticipate in the future. So we have the cost side. We got we have the expense side. I don't feel like we have that on the revenue side. That maybe that's a better way to put it. So if along with the talking points and a brief on how we would position what the challenge is, I think talking about not just the expenses but the revenue. And if one of the revenue options is looking at a public-private partnership, then let's throw what that looks like. If another revenue lever is some additional bond indebtedness, I would like to sort of see. I would like an opportunity to see those things sort of presented, so that we can make some decisions, some informed decisions about a recommendation. I don't know enough about like really any of those elements at this point to say what I would really get behind and endorse to the BCC. But I think that's kind of where my head is on the takeaways from today.
I'm kind of with you there. It feels premature to launch down a PPP RFQ path. I wonder if concurrent to our preparing the brief on the situation, somebody could tell us what the funding options are: PPP, sales tax, bonding, maybe a little of all of the above. Um, I don't know, Stacy, can you or someone at the county prepare a brief on funding options? And I know that how hard that is, and maybe they don't exist. But I don't know. I don't feel knowledgeable enough to say this is the right path without some input. I don't know. Anybody else feel that way? Is there a question for Stacy in that?
Real quick to clarify, RFQ is not an RFP. So it's a request for qualifications, not proposals.
The ones you mentioned are the ones I'm aware of. So we can put a little something together on each one of those, but they're pretty straightforward. I mean,
So in my mind, if just a plus on that, because I mean that I just need to remember the numbers, and so I think Chairman Steve kind of clarified what some of the numbers were. I think if we had even similar to your last page deal, I think if we had something along these lines, and if there is enough sort of insight, whether it's the RFQ language or some parameters about what these kinds of packages look like. So I mean, I responded the way I did because I'm actually not familiar with it. So I'm interested in seeing what the request for qualification language, but I also just want to understand the mechanics of those kinds of deals. I'm familiar with bonds. I'm familiar with taxes, right? And I'm familiar with project financing. I just want to understand what those different sort of criteria look like within this context. And if we can do some things even in the interim in the 30 days to move that forward. If that's information you guys can kind of pull together because you really kind of already have it, but we just have it in the document, email it out ahead of time or put it in an agenda where we could see it, and that's something that we could discuss. Going into August and be ready to take some real action. I think that would be great. I'm interested in the revenue side. I'm now just understanding the language. I think we knew we had the 200 and it wasn't enough, but we haven't even sort of had a spreadsheet that lined out like here are the different revenue options we know about, and then there's a dot 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 if anybody knows about anything else. Like, come to the August meeting and let's talk about any other idea that people have, so we can figure out some deliberation and or recommendation right on the revenue side.
I think that's fair because you really haven't dealt with the revenue side as a board since you've been sitting there. It's been more on the cost side and making some decisions about land and so forth. So
So are we saying, as we talk about that, are you going to try to put that in the message too? I mean, that becomes a very complex, maybe even muddy the water versus trying to ensure the fact that this facility has to be built. I mean, I'm not even sure, I may be oversimplifying this. I'm not even sure that most of the community understands what surrounding communities use this jail. Most people just think Oklahoma City, but it's not.
that's correct.
And so it's simple things like that and understanding the magnitude of where you get the people that are needed to be in the jail. And then when people understand the magnitude of how many smaller cities actually or municipalities use this jail, then it may key, well, how are they paying? That might be a thought process. But I'm about simplifying this message, and simplifying this message means this jail needs to be built and the reasons why.
So sorry. Yeah, just to clarify what I was saying, because I think I heard what Steve Cooper said. It's two things. I think it's two parallel things. I think just us having this, I just don't, I'm not educated enough to really speak towards giving recommendations or suggestions on the revenue side. So that's a task. But then this messaging piece and getting these talking points down to understanding the message that we don't think exists, I think is also a task. Those would be the two takeaways, I think.
And I think that what we're trying to decide on different funding opportunities that we can kind of use as our pathway forward are part of the second step. First, we need to analyze them internally, figure out what works best for everyone. If we can come up with a solution, then maybe we can simplify the solution for the end goal. If they need to even engage, if we want to do a tax, then it becomes part of their engagement, but not yet. Right now, yes, exactly. Educate them on the problem, educate them on how this is even structured, why we need it. And then once that messaging is out there and they start to realize, oh my gosh, we all need to get behind this. Meanwhile, we're coming up with our solution, and then at the right time, we'll execute the delivery of that.
Now, the only concern is whatever we do, we have to be expeditious about it. That's it, because when you know more than we do, Stacy. When the feds come in here, it's a done game.
I think our consensus is you're going to work on a presentation for our August meeting of funding options. Is that what we're saying? And I think Javier has the best understanding of the private sector options, and you can lean on him on working on that part of the presentation. Very good. Okay. Other thoughts here, friends? I want to go back to a thought of Santino that we started at the very beginning. Could we solve this really easily today to say, build a 730 bed facility for $220 million, tell the city of Oklahoma City, we're not going to accept your detainees, and we're done? I think you asked that question at the beginning.
I don't know. That seems like a real quotable statement, so I'm not sure if I'm not sure if that's what I asked. It was something like that. It was something like that.
I mean, if it gets really bad, we just, back to Joanne's thing, you got to get going.
Well, I thought of that, or you could say, we do not have the money to build the jail we need, so we're going to stop. We're not going to move we're not gonna do a darn thing until these things these two things, our need and our capacity to fund it, somehow get in line.
But Stacy, you go build the 730 beds, get inflation, we're done.
Yeah, I think either of those are radical kind of revisionings of what we're doing here that are that are closer to the reality of our situation than what we're doing now, which is design something
So
that we can't
so,
afford.
So since Steve Mason said that, I will I mean I would add on it. I don't think the first point is as radical though as doing nothing, because the thing that is true is, I mean, this is the city, but the citizenry, right, of this county and this metro area are committed to improving the humanity of our criminal justice system, and we're making down payments on that all over the place. And this facility is actually a really critical element to that, the way I see it. So when you guys put the screen up that was sort of showing the comparisons by square footage versus by bed, well, one of the reasons why our square footage numbers are consistent for a jail, but our per bed are a little off, is because we're building I'm going to use better language. We're building the supporting infrastructure for a more humane criminal justice system as part of this facility. And it is not lost on me that that in itself is a big deal and big endeavor, and something I don't know that we would have been in the position to do from the county standpoint or from this community standpoint even 10 years ago. But there is clear commitment with the diversion hub, with mental health, all these other things that people have voted on times and time again pretty extensively, that we want to build out that system. And the design, I will, to give HOK and the design team Reese credit, is very accommodating of that. So a 700 bed facility, while it doesn't seem to fit the needs of the community from a bed count, it absolutely responds to where we are headed as a community, I believe, and how we are treating people being detained primarily pre-trial, which means they are not guilty of a crime. They are accused of a crime. And I think that's just very important. That's a very important sentiment, which is why I asked the maybe not so rhetorical question of what happens if you build a 700 bed facility, because that is all that the government entities of this community are willing to support, i.e., the county put their hand up and said, we'll do it, but this is all we can do. And we looked around and nobody wanted a sales tax, nobody wanted to raise taxes or property taxes, so we did what we could, right?
But your message was right in there when you said what we're trying to do, where we're going, understanding that, you know, our criminal justice system has to be more humane, and this is an effort to get us there. And then, you know, and I'm gonna go with Javier a little bit, the very things that we're trying to do for those people that are in prison is to ensure that while they're there, when they come out, they don't come back. And so when we start doing that, that helps with us in terms of bringing in business and bringing in companies and bringing in people that want to live. And I got that. That's part of the message. But we got to get that message out there so folks will understand that how, even though it's complex, it's really, really simple here, y'all. So anyway, that's it.
Well, and additional bond funding is in the control of the county. And maybe another 100 million in capacity turns 700 beds into, I don't know, 900 or 1,500, or I don't know where that gets you. But and maybe we do all the county can do with its own purview, within its own
That's
control.
another vote of the people, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Ad valorem is, to just get one more dollar, it's a vote of the people.
Million that we have the capacity to do, would that require a vote
Yes,
of the citizens?
yes.
Thank you. Okay, are we somewhat clear where we're going? And one of the things I've asked them is on this community engagement process to see some stuff happening before our August meeting, which means they're going to get going on the content before we meet again. Is there anybody on our committee as they develop this content that would like to help them and look at it some? If not, no. I mean, I'm just offering that. If someone wanted to be involved, or we'll let them go and they're qualified. Okay, so you guys are gonna get going on that. You're gonna work on options. Rely on Javier. And this final option, if the community will only support what we have, let's just build 730 beds. It's not ridiculous if that's what the community tells us. And I think the point that was made, and Jeff has done it so eloquently, is emphasizing we are building a humane facility, which might lead to any godly comments from Pastor Forsyth about how we're trying to treat our neighbors and humans with this new facility. Pastor, you have any final comments as we end?
I Googled Oklahoma County, and there are 25 cities in Oklahoma County. There are almost 900,000 population. We all benefit as a society. We benefit from criminal justice by locking up the bad people, and we all participate in that. We all should contribute to that. And so you can't ignore the fact that we need to, if we want this, we have to pay for it. But we want it to be humane and a place like, just like Joanne said, when they get out, they don't come back. If the city of Oklahoma, I'm thinking about NATO and whether all the contributing countries are paying their fair share. Well, how about the rest of Oklahoma County, all these cities? Edmond's sending inmates. Edmond's a very wealthy community. Are they paying their fair share? I don't know. But you could always, if you're going to build a 700 bed or bed facility, you could give the city the county jail and let them house their own folks there. And they'll pretty much come up with some money if they hear that, because that's not a nice place to work.
Second.